All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of the CoreNet 2020 Mega Event. So excited to see all of you here. I'm Michelle Higgins of AvidXchange, as well as a CoreNet Event Committee member. Today, I will be a moderator for questioning your way to a new normal. To start, let's begin with some basic housekeeping requests. Please keep your mic on mute during the presentation component of this session. Please use the chat function for questions unless instructed to do otherwise. And lastly, this session will be recorded and will be shared after the event. Before we begin, I would like to give a few shout outs, as we would not be able to bring forth such an amazing event such as this without the generosity of our sponsors. Our diamond sponsors, CBRE, DPR Construction, and JLL. Our annual sponsors, which are all listed here, and our event sponsor, McVeigh and Mangum Engineering, Inc.
McVeigh and Mangum Engineering is a consulting firm offering multidisciplined engineering consulting to our clients.
Something fairly unique to us is to have all engineering disciplines associated with the building in-house. So in other words, once the civil engineers get the land ready for us, people can come to McVeigh Mangum and get the rest of the design done.
We offer structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, technology, lead, commissioning, and building information modeling services.
Awesome. Definitely check them out. Last update I have is to provide some details on upcoming CoreNet events. First, October 8th. Virtual building tour and real estate strategy discussion. End users in Triangle Market will be walking you through newly constructed space along with the strategy used for those visions. Up the next is November 5th. Virtual Core Awards is taking place. Registration will open on Monday, October 5th. Be sure to sign up. I am so excited for both of these. I truly hope to see you there. Phew. All right. Now, with no further delays, I'm going to hand it over to our panelists.
Welcome to today's session, everyone. Just as a brief introduction, we thought it was important for us to get together to think about in these times of great uncertainty. Why is it imperative that we go deeper? It's not enough to simply ask why these days. The art of inquiry, as we know, has the power to uncover hidden paths toward problem resolution or even spark innovation in areas that we've previously been dominated by the status quo. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Lapata, coming to you live from my outdoor office. I am a client leader with BHDP Architecture. I am a CoreNet Carolinas chapter board member, and I am also on the MCR faculty for CoreNet Global. And I'm very glad to have with me today a friend, a co-collaborator, one of the most creative guys I know, Mark Borst, all the way from Atlanta. Mark, can you say hello and introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm Mark Borst. I'm the Customer Experience Strategy Manager at Interface, which I think most of you are familiar with, a global modular flooring company. I've been doing the CX thing, customer experience thing, for about 10 years. I've been in the contract furniture industry most of my career. As Chris says, I live in Atlanta and live with my wife, Marilyn, and 2 cats. And I'm really excited to be with you. I'm very fond of the Carolinas, and I've been to one of your meetings, and I'm excited to be with you again.
Awesome. Glad you could be here, Mark. So I see some friendly faces out there. Thank you for those who are able to join. So really quick agenda. We wanted to share some resources and some strategies to help you develop your inquiry artistry. Not easy to say, but then we were going to break out into groups. We were going to leverage one of the strategies that we're going to highlight today around one key challenge. And then we're going to kind of co-create a short list of beautiful questions. And Mark's going to dive deeper into what makes a beautiful question. The first resource that we wanted to highlight today is a book by this gentleman, Frank Sesno. This book was recommended to me a couple years back by John Galden, a very deep thinker in his own right. And the book is entitled Ask More, The Power of Questions. Frank Sesno is a journalist. He's a news anchor. He's currently the director at the School of Media and Public Affairs at George Washington University. And the book asserts a couple of things. What if we asked more and asserted less? What would we discover? What would we discover about ourselves? What would we better understand about people and the world around us? So in the book, he highlights some really key questions, and feel free to take notes. If not, we'll be happy to share this deck. But the question types that Cessno identifies are some really key ones. There are strategic questions that he identifies, that the future is on the line. These are questions that are really going to help us to lean forward and figure out what the future is. Empathy, going deeper, learning what makes people tick. Bridging questions, trying to get people talking. I'm sure you all have used these in your daily routine. It's as simple as, noticing somebody's shoes, saying, hey, those are great shoes. Where did you get them? Just getting people talking. Creativity questions, encouraging others to think beyond the familiar. We all are really familiar with the world around us right now. But if you want to really tap into somebody's creativity, try this at a cocktail party or on a blind date. Ask them, if you could build a time machine and put yourself in the future, what would you be doing? What is it like? What do you see? It forces them to kind of reframe their perspective. Mission questions. How critical is it right now for us to, as an organization or as a culture, to find some shared purpose, find these common goals to get us out of the situation we're in? Scientific questions. Obviously, a hypothesis is if we do X, then Y will happen. Interview questions. Not only are they important questions for the interviewer, but also great questions for the applicant. This is all about seeing if there's a fit for the organization. Entertaining questions, something that's going to spice up a conversation. And then one that's I think is really critical, legacy questions. I think people and organizations can ask them, what have we accomplished? Who have we touched? And for this discussion, we wanted to focus on two. The first one, we're going to be strategic questions. And again, these are really designed to help us look into the future and help guide a person or guide a business. So it looks at courses of action we can take. How can we define success? What resources would we need to get to where we want to go? And potential intended or unintended consequences. The next set of questions would be mission questions. How can you use the power of questions to build your team, clarify that mission, get everybody rolling in the same direction? What and who do you care about? How might we partner together, either internally or find external partners? What is the expertise, passion, or capability of others? And really, how bold can we be in these challenging times? So this book, this reference that I'm going to let Mark talk about, was the impetus for this entire discussion today. Mark and I were having coffee over in Raleigh before the pandemic, actually sitting closer than 6 feet, right, Mark? We were a little closer than 6 feet, not
Yes,
much
we
closer,
were.
not too close. But Mark handed me this book, and he said, "Chris, you've got to read this book," and it really sparked this idea. So, Mark, take it away.
Well, spark's a good word because every time Chris and I get together, sparks tend to fly. But Warren Berger is a New York Times journalist and a CBS editor. This is one of his books on questioning. He has at least 2 of them and several other books as well. He's a self-proclaimed questionologist. I got to tell you, this book was a game changer for me. When I picked it up, and I can't remember how I first heard about it, it just resonated with me in so many different ways. So a number of years ago, as I'm sure was true of most of you, I became personally convinced in my professional life that there was no more business as usual. This book really tapped into that conviction. It's an open-ended, it provides rather an open-ended, iterative approach aimed at unlocking the power of creative thinking for innovation. And it does so not because it provides the right answers. It does so because it provides the right questions. It assumes a level of comfort with fuzzy edges, of thinking well outside of our personal boxes. Traditional planning and thinking tends to assume one right answer. In contrast, design thinking iterates toward a better answer, starting with the question why and moving us toward uncovering new solutions to problems, maybe even some we didn't know we had. This book is a roadmap for that kind of thinking. and it'll also hone the reader's critical thinking skills. I love the subtitle of the book. It's probably barely visible to you there at the top of the cover. Powerful questions that will help you decide, create, connect, and lead. I think these are all transformative verbs, and we'll do each one just a little bit deeper on the next slide. So how can questioning help us decide? Burgess says, good decision-making demands critical thinking, which is rooted in questioning. Critical thinking itself is in crisis. Berger asks this, how do we make enlightened judgments and choices in an era of growing collective inability to distinguish fact from fiction or fake news from the real thing? Creativity is fundamental to innovation and fresh thinking. What if we go looking for problems? How do we get unstuck? Connecting with others can be improved dramatically by asking more questions. And there's actually new research that suggests that we become more likable to others by asking the right questions. And as for leadership, Berger says it's becoming increasingly clear that the best leaders are those with the confidence and humility. Remember that word, humility. The confidence and humility to ask the ambitious and unexpected questions no one else is asking. There's a continuous thread around that theme through Cessno's work and through Berger's work as well.
Yeah, I really like the connected piece, Mark, because I think that most of us intuitively know if we take interest and ask questions of other people, we're going to have that connection. And one of the things that we're hearing from so many people these days in this situation we find ourselves in is that there's a lack of connectedness. So hopefully this will help people start asking great questions.
So related to that, I think to some extent are the 5 enemies of questions. So this is some of Berger's work. So as we briefly tick through these, think about how the 5 enemies of questioning might manifest in your personal life, your vocation, or your organization. So I think we can probably all agree that our education system still is mostly test-driven and answer-based. So is it any wonder that we might have a fear of not knowing the answer? Maybe exposing not knowing how to do our job or disappointing a work partner. Knowledge, the more you know, the less you feel you need to ask. So how do we expand and update our knowledge? Berger has a warning for us. Beware of answers dressed up as certainties. Bias and hubris related to each other. Some biases are hardwired in us. All of us have a certain amount of that, right? As for hubris, Berger suggests there's an interesting relationship between questioning and humility. There's that word again. We can ask ourselves, would I rather be right or would I rather understand? And then finally, time. We don't make the time for questioning. Again, it starts in school. Ask any teacher or home teacher parent right now these days. It takes so much time to download. There isn't any time left for questions. As our lives move faster and have become more complicated, very little time is allotted for inquiry, contemplation, and critical thinking. We're under pressure to make quick decisions and render snap judgments and just do without asking why. Speaking of why is questioning now more important than ever? I think this is probably at the crux of what we're trying to uncover here today. Berger says in a time of exponential change, questioning skills are a 21st century survival kit. Now more than ever, we have to rethink almost everything we're doing. Questioning is more important than ever because organizations, like individuals, must keep inquiring and learning in order to survive and prosper. Berger says the right questions are propulsive. I love that word. They propel us forward as opposed to slowing us down or paralyzing us with doubt. Elie Wiesel wisely stated that people are united by questions. It's the answers that divide them. So questions have the power to bridge the gaps between us, perhaps in the COVID era more than ever, as we question our way to the next normal.
Good point, Mark. Good point.
So, what are you a beautiful questioner? Here's some of the characteristics. Are you willing to be seen as naive? Another way of saying that is, are you bold enough to ask the questions that need to be asked? Am I comfortable raising questions with no immediate answer? The trick is to become comfortable living with questions. As I mentioned earlier, a fundamental aspect of design thinking is that you don't assume one right answer. Rather, you're moving back and forth between abstract and particular thought processes, you iterate toward a better answer. So how do we train ourselves to do this? How do we go outside of our own bubble? It's really by asking the right questions. How do we move away from what we know, admit we might be wrong? Remember, the more we think we know, the less likely we are to ask questions. And then there's that humble leadership thing we referenced earlier. What role do biases play in our strategy and business approach? Am I willing to slow down and consider? So the question is not, what do you have time for? The question is, what do you make time for? We make time for things that matter.
Yeah, quick show of hands. Everybody on the call, raise your hand if you actually build time in your calendar to sit down and ask yourselves questions about things that might be troubling you, things that might be challenging you. It's hard to do, right? Go ahead, Mark.
So here's a few examples about how to build a beautiful question. And use questions, always beautiful questions are used to open up possibilities, right? So they're open-ended. Related to that, so how can I open up the question to be decided? Bear with me here, there's a little bit of science involved, but we're going to talk about binary versus non-binary questions. And I've got a couple examples to share with you. It's really quite simple. So non-binary is open-ended, and non-binary questions tend to start with phrases like, what are the best ways to fill in the blank, or how might I fill in the blank? So here's an example of an easy binary closed question, and those tend to be our default, by the way. So here's the question. Given the problems I'm having with my boss, should I quit my job? Yes or no? So there's the binary version. Here's the non-binary open-ended version of that question. I'm having problems with my boss at work. How might I address that? Here's another one. What is the counterintuitive choice? If you, as you're approaching questioning, include one option that goes completely against all the others, you may not decide to use it, but it will certainly stimulate some unconventional thinking. And then finally, what would an outsider do? You can go to an actual outsider and get help and an answer to this, or just try to look at the situation the way an outsider might. So think about what Chris said earlier from Cessno's work about empathy questions. I myself use a tool called empathy mapping, which generates amazing customer insight through a questioning methodology. So there's lots of ways to get at that.
Awesome.
So here's some examples of questions from the book, and these are around creativity. So find your big idea. So first one is, what stirs me? Second one, what bugs me? What's missing? What do I keep coming back to? And then my personal favorite, what is ripe for reinvention? That last question can be reframed a different way. One of the powerful things you can do with a question is to use it to temporarily shift reality. Here's an example of that. This question, what would I try if I knew I could not fail? And then moving on to the next slide, we have a series of questions for organizational and personal leadership. And I love all these equally, as all 5 of my children, or 6, or however many there are. Starting with, if we disappeared tomorrow, who would miss us? What do we do that others can't or won't? How might we be not just a company, but a cause? Speaking personally here, I'd have to say that my company, Interface, plays this out really well. It really exemplifies this because since 1994, when Ray Anderson first came up with our sustainability mission, we became obsessed with one thing that drove everything we do in terms of what we make, how we make it, and the people that do it. And that was becoming a net zero carbon company by 2020. And we did it. It's also apparent in our tagline, which I would actually call our purpose line, which is, and I love this, leading industry to love the world. So what if we actually took that leading industry to love the world purpose line and turned it into a question? It's an simplistic way to look at the next question, which is, what is your vision question? Chris talked about mission questions from Cessno. I love this one. What is your vision question? So we could take the statement from Interface and say, what must we do to better lead industry to love the world? It opens up our vision into a question, open-ended question. How can we become the company that will put us out of business? And then finally, how might I make tomorrow visible? I think this one's especially prescient in this day and age. A lot of us have customers that are really struggling with the question of how long is temporary in this COVID era. I know a lot of our customers are struggling with square footage, utilization, optimization. How much do we need now? How much might we need in the future? So I think this question is really important. Another way to look at it is how permanent is this COVID-driven pivot that we're in the middle of? So how might we make tomorrow visible? Here's another provocative way to look at that from a personal perspective, and that is, what would future me decide? Can you project yourself to the other side of all this and look back? Is there a narrative there that would inform what you might do now?
See, that's why you need a time machine, Mark.
Yeah,
If you had a time machine, you could tell yourself what the future me would do. Awesome, thank you. So we've got one more resource we'd love to share with you. It is from a gentleman by the name of Hal Gregerson, who is the executive director of the MIT Leadership Center. He's an author, he's a motivational speaker, he's a professor, but he's dedicated his life to this core questioning philosophy that you see right on your screen. What if you could unlock a better answer to most challenging problems simply by changing the question? And he concludes that if we never stop questioning, we never risk losing our own childlike sense of wonder and our power to disrupt the status quo. So he wrote an article for the Harvard Business Journal, or Harvard Business Review, sorry, easy for me to say, entitled Better Brainstorming. And we're going to send this article out to you at the end of the session. And he introduces the concept of the question burst in this article. He was teaching an MBA class at MIT, and he was leading a brainstorming session, and he described that session as being so slow it was like wading through oatmeal. They were trying to address in the class a really heavy, important challenge to many organizations, and that was how to build a culture of equality in a male-dominant environment. So the class was really low energy. Everyone was staring at the clock. We've all been in those classes. And he said, let's forget about the answers. Let's come up with as many questions as we can in the time we have left. And he quickly saw that the room was energized. The question burst is really around these three things. It's creative discovery through open and honest inquiry. It's about coming up with fresh questions that lead to novel and sometimes transformative insights. And it's really a simple process to use. And, you know, he lays out the steps for creating this question burst session, and I want to share those with you. So the first step is setting the stage. And in that setting the stage step, we want to do a few things. We want to select a challenge that we care about deeply. And I know what you're saying to yourself. You're saying, Chris, what the hell? How am I supposed to identify those challenges? Well, ask yourself, does it make your heart beat faster? Or if you sit there and think about that challenge for a while, do you get angry? Does it make you mad? Second step is to invite others to help you consider different perspectives. This is what Mark had talked about, reaching out to other people. When you ask other people to participate, you're making yourself very vulnerable by sharing the problem, but you're also summoning a lot of empathy, which fosters idea generation. And we've learned that from design thinking. So you want to make sure you include 2 or 3 people that have no direct experience with the problem. Those people that have a totally different worldview. These are the people who are going to be in the room, and they're going to point out the elephant in the room. or they're going to ask those third rail questions. And if you're not from Chicago, you might not know what the third rail is, but it's the rail that carries all the electricity for the power to power the trains. And if you step on it, you get a big jolt. So that's why you want the different opinions in the room. It's a different process than traditional brainstorming. Traditional brainstorming, as we know, can create a lot of anxiety. Question bursts are designed to kind of reverse this and create a safe space, and it kind of puts off the rush to get to an answer. Does that make sense? Then in the question burst, whoever's leading, it's their responsibility to lay out the problem in 2 minutes maximum at a very high level. You got to share the problem and then share how would life be better? How would things get better if we were able to solve this challenge? The next is that not all questions are created equal. And I know you're asking yourselves again, Chris, what kind of questions are you looking for? And Mark, say it with me. We're looking for beautiful questions. So we're looking for those questions that probe a little bit deeper. There are 2 critical rules in a question burst session. Number 1 is that the participants can only contribute questions. And number 2, no preambles or justification for your questions are allowed. And if you're leading the question burst, it's really important to not only check your own mood. How do I feel about the team in the room right now? How do I feel about this challenge? But check the mood of the participants and see what they feel about that challenge or that situation. Second is brainstorming the questions only. Short, simple, fresh questions. So when we get into our exercise a little bit later, please remember these rules. Short, simple, and fresh questions. Mark and I are going to be leading the session, and we're going to set a timer for 4 minutes. The objective is to come up with at least 15 questions. The emphasis is on quantity. The more surprising or provocative the questions, the better. No pushback is allowed by anyone in the room. No crosstalk, just questions. And obviously, no answers. There's nothing magic about that 4-minute, 15 question guideline. It really is designed to help with performance. Studies have shown that some moderate performance pressures can really enhance creative output. So Gregerson, he says that multiple question bursts might help reshape or refine or solve a problem. So when the 4-minute timer goes off, it's important for Mark and I, we're going to come back to you. We're going to check your pulse, check your feelings, your mood, and ask how you feel compared to 4 minutes ago. And then this is really about trying to keep everybody in the room, everybody in the question burst in a really positive state, because we know that better answers come in when people are in a more positive state. So the next step to the question burst that Gregerson puts forth is to identify a quest. So we need everybody to get into their chat box right now. Find the chat box, because we got a little competition going on. Michelle, Mike, and I are going to be the judges. Because Gregerson notes that 80% of the time, the exercise will produce one really good question that helps us reframe the problem and giving us a new angle for solving it. But having a quest, having a reason, something that helps us move forward is critical. So in the chat box, I want you to identify what you see in the pictures. There's 6 pictures. What do you see and what is the quest? We'll give you a minute to do that. Michelle, we have any coming in yet? I don't know if she came back yet.
I did come back, but no, not yet.
Not yet?
Oh, Fortune and Glory, Discovery, Exploring New Frontiers. Quest is exploration, new frontiers, adventure, focus, another one with adventure.
Awesome.
To infinity and beyond. Definitely my favorite so far. Challenge, never too far.
Awesome. The point is that just coming up with the questions, it's essential, but it's not sufficient. We need to kind of move through that and break open a pathway to change in order to meet some of those challenges. So we're gonna select a few of the questions that intrigue us at the end or make us feel uncomfortable. We're gonna expand those with why questions. And then we're gonna devise that action plan we talked of. The 3 rounds of a question burst that Gregerson recommends, the 3 rounds is not a big time investment. But it is a challenge. You're going to feel uncomfortable because we're using different muscles in this type of exercise. It's kind of out of line with established norms in work and in life because since childhood, we've been conditioned to not ask questions, and people typically are afraid of how they're perceived if they're asking questions. When we're students, we're judged by how good our answers are. But as we get older in life, we know that we're judged by how good our questions are. So we're gonna Gregerson recommends going through 3 rounds of a question burst. And he thinks that if you can do this as an organization, you can raise your questioning quotient. We've all heard of intelligence quotient, emotional quotient. But if you think about some of the best companies in the world, Amazon, Pixar, Tesla, IDEO, Google, all of these companies have built their cultures on asking each other really tough questions. And this one is the most important. And here's that word, humility again. Gregerson asserts that leadership must show humility, vulnerability, trust, equality, and empowerment. If these are missing from an organization, he says that questions are going to be constrained. I think we could all agree with that. Or even worse, these questions could be crushed and you'd be losing that innovation that you need. In making it a habit, it's also really important to keep each other accountable. There's nothing more annoying than a colleague or a boss that does nothing but ask questions. So there's this need to hold each other accountable, set timelines, set goals, and then hopefully this will send a message that this is the way we're going to challenge the status quo. This is how we're going to craft the future as a company. Does all those make sense? So per Gregerson, he notes that the power of the question burst really lies in its ability to alter a person's view of the challenge. This guy started a great little software company, right? He's got some favorite questions that he asks when dealing with a difficult challenge. First thing he asks when he comes across a challenge is who has faced a similar problem and handled it well. The next thing he'll ask is, what can we learn from them? It's 2 easy questions. So again, in the chat box, or if you feel like you want to come off mute or raise your hand, who has a favorite business question that they ask? One of mine is, if you had a magic wand, what problem in your business would you make go away? Mark, what's yours?
One of my favorites is, where is your pressure coming from?
Very good. Michelle, are we getting any in the chat, or did anybody come off mute?
So the first thing that came up in chat is why?
Great question.
Who is Chris Lapata Inc.? What are you doing to make a difference? Not in the same sentence. What is your passion?
Great one. Great question. A lot of empathy in that question, right?
Yes. What does
Any others?
success look like? What value does this statement add versus my competitors? One that I always asked more so in interviews was, what is the one area of development that would have been listed on your last review? Or if I was to talk to your former boss, In the box, obstacles or difficulties that you face.
Awesome. Great
What do
question.
you hope to achieve as a team, company, project? How does this decision impact you personally? Obstacles or difficulties that you face. I don't know if I said that one yet.
That's great. So you all have come up with some fantastic questions. We're going to capture this chat and we're going to share it back with you all. So in the chat box, we'd love for a couple of people to, or everybody on the call, put one or two things that you think are the biggest challenges we face today as a human race. And I'm not going to share with you what yesterday's group said. I want you to come up with your own. What are the biggest challenges we face today as a human race? When they start coming in, Michelle, let us know.
Ego, listening to each other, finding a common ground, accepting someone else is correct or has a better answer, political
Awesome.
confusion, respect, lack of empathy, pollution of air and water, mutual respect and kindness, being comfortable with people different than ourselves, empathy, fear, be positive. How long can we commit to temporary?
Awesome. All great questions.
Patience.
All right. Or all great challenges that that the human race faces. So we're gonna do a little breakout exercise right now. Mark, did you hear anything, any challenges in that list that you might want to try to tackle? I got one in mind, but I wanted to put it out to you first.
I liked them all, actually. Empathy sort of sticks out because it occurred more than once in various forms. What's
I
yours,
mean,
Chris?
I think that is a skill that a lot of people absolutely need to develop. If we're going to do a question burst, why don't we do it around pollution? I think we can. I think we can develop some great questions around pollution or the environment.
Yep.
So, folks, this is the first time that we're really doing this virtually. 2020 has provided a lot of firsts for everyone. We appreciate your willingness to participate in this exercise and your patience. So we're going to break out into two different groups, and we've already pre-assigned some scribes. Cindy with Noel and Patty Murphy they have been willing and offered to act as scribes in our group. So we're going to break out into groups. Mark and I are going to kind of lay out the high level challenge, and then we're going to do our question burst. We're going to capture them, and then we're going to come back in about 4 minutes. That sound good? Amanda, whenever you're ready.
All right, I'm putting it to you right now.
All right, who came back first, Amanda? My group or Mark's group?
Anna was the first one, so I'm not sure if that was what
Our
group.
group. All right, we're right on time. Awesome.
Always a competition with you, Chris. Always.
Oh yeah. Okay, so how does everybody feel? Did you get Mark? Did you get a pulse check or a mood check from people in your group?
I did get a pulse check. I'm feeling a little angry right now that your group came in sooner than us, but you should also know that we spent some time with critical thinking and got some serious work done. We got a relieved, we got a depressed, and we got a my hand is hurting from our scribe.
That was Patty. Awesome, awesome. We went from confused, frustrated to energized to oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Let's get to the questions. We'll start with your group. Patty, you were the scribe. How many questions did your team come up with?
19.
Nice job. So the goal was 15 questions in 4 minutes. It's not easy the first time you do it, is it, folks? Patty, you want to read off some of the questions you came up with?
Sure. How do we create an education program? How can we do this as individuals? How do we simplify the process? I have to try to read my chicken scratch, sorry. How do we involve folks across the political spectrum without tension? How can we sell it? How do we incorporate low socioeconomic societies? How do we incentivize plants to do better? How do we make more recyclable products? How do we clean up today? How do we destigmatize public transportation? What is our start point? What is our end point? How do we get more time was one of our questions. And how do we make people care? And I probably missed some only because I can't read what I wrote.
No, fantastic. Give you guys, I guess, give yourselves a golf clap. Great job. I mean, some great questions that really reframe the problem, right? I mean, that question about like destigmatizing public transportation, right, especially in the day and age we're in right now, what an immense challenge. So hopefully you all felt how this exercise reframed the problem, reframed the challenge. Cindy, how about you? How many questions did the A team come up with? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
25.
Oh, overachievers all the way. Overachievers, every one of you. You want to read off?
I had 6 before we started.
Right. We front loaded it, Eric. So don't read all 25, Cindy. Pick out a few of the ones that are really compelling, please.
How do we change personally today? What can we do minimally with the most impact? Sorry, I have to throw the funny one in. How badly do you need a straw? What are the facts? Who sets the standard to manage pollution? What are the roadblocks to making change? What personal lifestyle changes can we make? What's the role of technology? What can we teach our children? What kind of timeframes are we looking at to face serious consequences? And how do we inspire other people to care? I thought that was a really good one.
Fantastic. Great job, everybody. Great job. I'm going to share my screen again. Amanda, I don't know if I can bring that up. Here it is. So you got your first taste of a question burst. Everybody seeing that screen? Great job on the breakout. We've got a couple more minutes left. Nice report out. Thank you again to Cindy and Patty. This is where the call to action would come into play. So you'd get together with your team. You'd gain a consensus around the best questions that you might want to bring back to the organization or bring back to leadership, and then really start to dive deep and ask those why questions around it, and then set up that action plan. Like, what are you going to do in the next 3 weeks as a team to help move the problem forward? So we're kind of getting toward the end of the session. If anybody who's still off of mute or wants to come off mute, what might you take away from our time together today, and how might you apply it? Anybody want to share, or I can call on somebody. Hunter, you shared something in the breakout. You wanna come off mute and share what you shared in the breakout? Okay. Hopefully, this information that Mark and I were able to deliver kind of help to reframe the way you think about questioning and the way you think about interacting with people. It really does take a lot of humility. It takes a lot of empathy to put this into practice. And we would encourage everyone to kind of try to build that muscle and, use it to help yourselves, your families, and your organizations really think through the challenging times that we have right now. Unless there are any questions or comments, Michelle, do you have anything you need to add?
All right, just taking myself off mute. So first, I just want to say thank you very much to all the attendees for coming. We really appreciate all the participation. We look forward to seeing you at our future events. And then definitely thank you to our panelists, Chris and Mark. You guys rocked it. This was awesome. And I guess I will add that one thing I would take away from this is when you only allow people to ask the questions and not solution, you start to learn a lot of how each individual is thinking about something. And you can find the strengths in each of those. Like, okay, if you're passionate about that, let's have you focus in that area while we tackle this and come together as a team to have a much bigger effect.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, don't jump to answers. Start with great questions. Mark, thanks again for joining us.
My pleasure.
Honorary Carolinas chapter member now. And thank you, everybody. Be well, be safe, and we look forward to seeing y'all soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.